لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا وحبيبنا ومطاعنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. قال تعالى بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وعد الله الذين آمنوا منكم وعملوا الصالحات ليستخلفنهم في الأرض وليمكنن لهم دينهم الذي ارتضى لهم وليبدلنهم من بعد خوفهم أمنا يعبدونني لا يشركون بي شيئا ومن كفر بعد ذلك فأولئك هم الفاسقون إلى آخر الآيات. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إنما أنا رحمة مهداة أو كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. ولقد أحسن القائل بلغ العلا بكماله كشف الدجى بجماله حسنت جميع خصاله صلوا عليه وآله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. يا ربي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. Respected elders, ulama kiram, beloved brothers, what a deen Allah has given us. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sowed the seeds, and how these seeds reach the four corners of the world. And Allah speaks about this in the Quran, how Allah Ta'ala makes these seeds reach every four corner. As our topic that you know today, it actually started from the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We all know the famous incident of Ta'if that I'll just refer to. Allah's Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to Ta'if, 10th year Hijri. 10th year after Nubuwah. So you get the Meccan period and the Medina in Islam. The people of Ta'if were known as the Thaqif tribe. Try and remember some of these names. Then Allah's Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrated to Medina Munawwara. But the people of Ta'if, how they treated him, they hurt him and insulted him and chased him away. And he bled to a great extent. And then he was offered to destroy these nations with the mountain ranges collapsing over them. But Allah's Nabi, with mercy in his heart, forgave them, hoping that they will get hidayat, or someone from their progeny will get hidayat. This people of Ta'if. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrated to Medina Munawwara. He lived in Medina Munawwara for 10 years. In those 10 years, in the 8th year, he conquered Makkah Mukarramah. After Makkah Mukarramah, he went to Ta'if again. Again, there was no success. The people's hearts were not opening, the people of Ta'if. So many years of dua. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam returned to Medina Munawwara. One man from Ta'if got hidayat. Urwa bin Mas'ud Thaqafi. Remember his name, Thaqif again. Urwa bin Mas'ud Thaqafi. If you can remember, very good. If you can write it, very good. But at least make a mental note. Thaqafi, Thaqif, very similar pronunciation. Thaqif, Urwa bin Mas'ud Thaqafi. He comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He embraces Islam. He spends time in the environment of Medina Munawwara. His heart is filled with the love of Allah and the love of Deen. He wants this for his people because he's a senior from the people of Ta'if. Allah's Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, your people are not ready. He says, my people love me. So he goes to his region, Ta'if again. He gathers them. He greets them with salam. They don't want to greet with salam. They want to greet with their greeting of the Arabs. So then he invites them to Allah. It was the time of Salah. He went onto his balcony. He called out the adhan. They didn't like it. They shot him from different directions. He was shaheed. But on his deathbed, his people come to him. And they say, we're going to take lives for you, for your sake. He said, I forgive those who killed me. And he made them maafi. He forgave them, that may Allah accept me for shahadat. From this now, 6 people were touched. They got together. They made a jamaat, a group of people. They came to Medina Munawwara to change. Allah's Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam welcomed them in Medina. They stayed in Masjid al-Nabawi and they came to Islam. This was the first embracing of Islam of the people of Ta'if, the Thaqif tribe. This was in Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's time. In Umar radiallahu anhu's time, so this is Ta'if. Where's Ta'if? 60 miles from Makkah Mukarramah. Now years later, when did Islam reach our topic? What we are talking about is India, Sindh and Hind. Much later, during Umar radiallahu anhu's time, some tabi'een and sahaba were passing that region. It's not proven, with thorough proof whether they entered or not, but there is still ambiguity in that regard. During the rule of Walid bin Abdul Malik. Now, Walid bin Abdul Malik is a ruler from the Umayyad dynasty. Umayyad dynasty are the offspring of Muawiyah radiyallahu anhu, the great Sahabi of Rasulullahﷺ. This dynasty took Islam far and wide. One of the rulers was Walid bin Abdul Malik. His governor, so Walid bin Abdul Malik is the Khalifa of the Muslim world. Where was the Khilafah? Damascus. His governor over the two Iraqs, Iraq, Iran, Hijaz-e-Muqaddas, that whole region. His governor over those regions was a man, you heard his name many times. His name was Hajjaj bin Yusuf. You have heard this name. Now, when we study history, we don't only study the good of people. We study their mistakes also. Because nobody is perfect. But we don't only study their mistakes and chuck them out. Actually, we learn about the good, their achievements, and we appreciate that, and we make dua for them for that, and we emulate those achievements. And regarding their mistakes, we abstain from those mistakes. And we do not affiliate ourselves to that, and we do not emulate those mistakes of theirs. But the mistakes that people made should not make us wipe out the good that they had carried out, and the ihsan that they have made on us. The same individual, Hajjaj bin Yusuf, in his time, it was which year? 92 Hijri. What's the year? Which year are we in now? 1440. 1440 Hijri. MashaAllah. 1440 Hijri. So 92 Hijri. Hijri is after the Hijrah of Rasulullah ﷺ, his famous journey from Makkah Mukarramah to Medina Munawwara. That's the Hijrah of Rasulullah ﷺ. So 92 Hijri. More than 1300 years ago, there was these Muslims in that region passing there. And the king of India at that time, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, those regions were one. They were known as two, Hind and Sindh. Punjab. Punjab or Punjab means 5 rivers. The 5 rivers around the Sindhi Ilaka, the Sindhi region. Now there were these Muslims traveling there. And the king at that time was Raja Dahir, the Indian king. Somehow, either he usurped the wealth of this group of travelers, they were traveling via the sea, or it was some highway robbers that did so, but Hajjaj bin Yusuf was very upset. One historical report says that one of the women said, "Where's our brother Hajjaj?" Because the same Hajjaj, he was the man who sent Qutayba bin Muslim Bahili, who was a great warrior of Islam. He took Islam into Turkey, into Bukhara, into Samarkand, the lands of great scholars. That Qutayba reached there under Hajjaj bin Yusuf. Hajjaj bin Yusuf sent his men, Muhallab bin Abi Sufra, to fight against the forces of Batil, who were the Khawarij, people who were trying to distort Islam. So Hajjaj took Islam into many, many regions. This time this letter comes to Hajjaj. He receives this letter. He is in Iraq, Kufa. And what the letter says, that who is there to help us? Where's our brother Hajjaj? Hajjaj was saddened by this. He wrote a letter to Dahir, that why have you usurped the wealth of these Muslims? Why have they been oppressed like this? So Dahir responded saying, I have nothing to do with it. And one report says, he even said that what we take, we don't give back. Hajjaj got very upset. He took the permission of the Khalifa. I'm sending the army. He gave him permission. He sent the first army. They were vanquished. The Muslims lost. The second time, there's a report that say the Muslims lost again. Third time now, Hajjaj seeks permission from Walid bin Abdul Malik. Allow me to send this army into India, Hind, India. Muslims were oppressed there. And those people also need hidayat. Who's going to teach them? And then he says, I am prepared to take full responsibility of this army. And I'm prepared to fund this army, that no matter what I use, I will pay it back to the Baytul Mal, meaning I personally will fund this army taking Islam into this region. And then he personally sent his son-in-law and his cousin. Muhammad was only 18 at that time, a very brave warrior of Islam. And another Muhammad bin Qasim Thaqafi. Who's Thaqafi? the people that come from Ta'if, the people that Rasulullah forgave, the people that tortured Rasulullah and he made dua for their hidayat. That same Muhammad bin Qasim Thaqafi takes his men, 12,000 men. How did they travel? No aeroplane, no motor car. They had to travel via the sea, via land, on foot, on animals, thousands and thousands of kilometers from one side of the globe to the other side of the globe. Why? For the people of India to get hidayat, for them to recognize Allah, for them to see the beauty of Deen. This army travels via the ocean, via the land. It took them months and months. One report says, Hajjaj bin Yusuf's instruction, every 3 days write me a letter. Where y'all are? What are y'all passing? What are y'all doing? Every 3 days there was a report, a Karguzari had to be given to Hajjaj bin Yusuf. One report says every day, this army reaches. Finally they reach this one region of India. When they get to this region, the people, now Muhammad bin Qasim ruled with, and he fought with great mercy. When they went in the path of Allah Ta'ala, this Raja Dahir was very upset. And obviously he came with his armies. Now, the first battle that took place between Muhammad bin Qasim and the army of India, the Rajputs of India, the Singhs of India, was the Indians were under a commander by the name of Bhim Singh. And Alhamdulillah, Muhammad bin Qasim conquered, and they took Bhim Singh as captive, and they invited this individual to Islam. And this individual embraced Islam, and he joined Muhammad bin Qasim. Finally, they reach an area called Dibal. In Arabic, this is known as Dibal, the Arabic word. So I was trying to find out what is this Dibal. It's not Dabel. This is in the Pakistan region. Actually, it's known as Bambur. Those from Pakistan would know these regions. Bambur. It's called now Bambur. They reach this region here. Now, this is known as the Sindhi Ilaqa of Hind of India. This is the Sindh section of India. And when they get to this region, they fought in battle after battle. And the Hindus were not giving up until they realized the only way is to bring down their janda. On top of their mandir was a flag. And Alhamdulillah, he himself brought down that flag, and all the Hindus surrendered. And the Muslims took over that region, and they saw the kind treatment of Muslims. Because they never had wonderful treatment. They were never treated well. They were always ill-treated. Especially though they had this caste system. And with akhlaq was the treatment of the Muslims. Many Hindus embraced Islam. And like this, Muhammad bin Qasim took Islam into many regions until the time he reached Multan. It took him 2 years from this area, Dibal, striving in Allah's way right till Multan. But by the time he reached Dibal, he was numbering 12,000. When he reached Multan, 100 and some odd thousand, approximately 100,000. Meaning Hindus were embracing Islam and joining him and changing their lives. Many were embracing Islam, but from those embracing Islam, many were joining him until they reached this region here. And Islam spread far and wide. That was 92 right till 95. So Muhammad bin Qasim was almost like a don or a chief or a king in India. But then some misunderstanding took place in the Muslim lands of Damascus, where Walid passed away and Sulaiman bin Abdul Malik took over. Sulaiman being a very good ruler, but he didn't like the method of Hajjaj. So what he did is, he also made a mistake here. Yes, Hajjaj was to be taken to task for his other practices of tyranny. But what he did is, everyone under Hajjaj was called back and ill-treated. Now that also is un-Islamic. That is ill-treating someone who's doing great work. And Muhammad bin Qasim, when he was in India arrested, the people of India asked him, "We will fight for you." He said, "No, this is Amirul Mu'mineen arresting me. I submit to Amirul Mu'mineen." This is indication to his submission to the unity of the Muslims. That he is the Khalif, he is the ruler, what he says I have to do. And then he was taken and he was imprisoned until he passed away. But this great ihsan he did unto India, this Muhammad bin Qasim rahimahullah. But after him, there was a great standstill in the spread of Islam in India. And years went by. The Abbasids tried to a great extent, but they couldn't achieve what Muhammad bin Qasim rahimahullah achieved. Until a great ruler ruled, whose name is famous, And we always hear about his name. We always hear his name in the talks of our Buzrugan ad-Din and our Hazrat. They always give us stories, beautiful stories about his name. But the beautiful part is, we should actually know when he lived. Like, who was this individual? His name was Mahmud. Mahmud bin. Bin means the son of Subuktukin. His father was Subuktukin, the king of Ghazna. Ghazna is Afghanistan, that whole Afghanistan region. His father was Subuktukin, father passed away, son took over. What was the son's name? Mahmud bin Subuktukin. We always know him as Mahmud Ghaznawi. Now just to remind you, and most of you would remember, you know the incident of Mahmud and Ahmad Ayas, his famous servant that he loved very much. And everyone was jealous of Ahmad Ayas. Do you remember the incident? We always hear this incident. Mahmud and Ahmad Ayas, everyone was jealous of Ahmad Ayas. Why does Mahmud love him so much? And then he wanted to prove to all his ministers. What was he proving to them? Why he loves Ahmad Ayas? Because of Ahmad Ayas's loyalty. Ahmad Ayas was so loyal that he loved the ruler unconditionally. And he appreciated what the king had done for him. He always remembered his former life and how the king made him reach where he reached. And people tried to actually blackmail Ahmad Ayas on so many occasions. And sometimes they tried to actually tarnish his reputation. But each time he came out innocent. To such an extent, on one occasion, Mahmud calls all his ministers and he calls for the crown jewel. That beautiful jewel, the most beautiful, expensive jewel of Ghazna. And this is not the Koh-i-Noor. The Koh-i-Noor comes in India afterwards. But this is a famous jewel of Ghazna, where he hands it over to all his ministers. And he says to them, evaluate this jewel. And each one evaluates that the value of this one gemstone is equivalent to 60 camel loads of gold. And he instructs each one to destroy it, meaning crush it. And each one refuses. Until when Ahmad was called while he was busy in his errands, and he was made to present himself before the ruler, and he says, yes, O my beloved king. He says, Ahmad, what do you think is the value of this jewel? He says that it's extremely valuable, the most valuable asset in the entire kingdom. Evaluate it. He says that 60 camel loads of gold. He says, Ahmad, destroy it. And instantaneously, without thinking twice, he crushes it. When there was a huge hue in the court of the ruler, and everyone was complaining, and Ahmad was asked, how dare you do such a thing? Don't you know the value of this jewel? He says, I know the value of the jewel, but the value of my master is much more. What we learn from there is we have to obey Allah, who is our master, unconditionally, without using logic and thinking and evaluating and then doing. Allah wants us to obey Him in every condition, and having yaqeen that there is success in Allah's command, there is success in Rasulullah's way. So that's famous. This is the Mahmud Ghaznawi. Then the famous incident of Mahmud rahimahullah, when he would go and he joined the 6 bandits. Famous incident. There's one ajib incident about Mahmud Ghaznawi, where a man comes to him, Mahmud rahimahullah, and says to him that for long now I haven't been able to muster up the courage to come tell you that there's someone who claims that he is your nephew, and he comes into my house and he chases me out and he usurps and he dishonors my wife, and he's doing this for so long and I don't know what to do. I couldn't come to you because he is of your family. He says, how could you not have come to me sooner? 3 days later or so, and then Mahmud rahimahullah told his guards, don't hinder this person on his entry, let him come to me immediately. 3 days later, when this person comes to complain to King Mahmud, which year is this? Just to put you into the time wave or the time frame. This is the year approximately 390 Hijri. So this man comes to him 3 days later. Is he there? He says, yes, he's there at my home. Mahmud rahimahullah rushes with this individual. He goes to his home and he comes in straight. This person was, violating this man's wife, and he kills him on the spot with the light being off. When he kills him, and then he says, switch on the light and get me water immediately. That until I help you, I'm not doing that. When you are making jihad against this region, then what you do, you make dua, that, oh Allah, if this person has some maqam before you, oh Allah, you help us. And what the idol can do, the idol cannot do. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who was doing. And this is how they strove in Allah ta'ala's way, striving in Allah ta'ala's path. But Mahmud strove in Allah's path in India, but it is fast and so vast in India under him, because he conquered and he returned, and he conquered and he returned. What was the reason he didn't stay? Actually, he had so many other regions to worry about, and his capital was Ghazna. Some reports say that it was very, very hot, but imagine the distance. But he came in spite of that for the hidayat of these people, of the people of India. After that, there was another ruler who brought Islam into India and had a greater impact than Mahmud Ghaznavi rahimahullah, who was Qutbuddin Ghawri rahimahullah. He came into India in the latter 500s, meaning the 6th century, the end of the 6th century, beginning of the 7th century. He came striving in Allah Ta'ala's path in these regions of India. And when he came to fight and make jihad and striving in Allah Ta'ala's way, inviting people to Allah, calling people to Allah's deen, showing them the truth, he came with his number of men were very few. Then numbering 5,000 or 10,000. He was in the center of his army. As the Hindus, pushed aside the wings of his army, he was in the center. And he kept on fighting until he fell off either it was his elephant or it was his conveyance, his horse. He fell onto the ground and he was about to be killed. But it was his slave, who later became a great ruler, whose name was Shihabuddin Ghori. His slave's name was Qutbuddin Aybak. Qutbuddin raced with his conveyance and saved his master, got him onto the conveyance, and he rushed him out of that region until he went back into Afghanistan after that. But he was very, very hurt that he couldn't conquer that region. This was a region near Ajmer, that region, Haryana region of India, not far from Delhi. But he cried to Allah, because Qutbuddin Ghori was a man of great sacrifice. And he wanted the people of India to get hidayat. And he made great intention that I'm going to go back into India. And then he saw a very pious person in a dream, telling him, you will come to India, Allah will give you rule, and your people will rule after you. And this dream gave him himmat. But he saw this dream repeatedly. And ulama advised him that you go back, Allah will help you. And the ruler, one great king of India at that time was Prithvi Raj. Raja Prithvi. When Qutbuddin rahimahullah came in with his army, this Raja, this king of India, came to fight him with 500,000 men and 3,000 elephants. And he came to fight Qutbuddin rahimahullah. But in this interim, before Qutbuddin came back, this was now by the time the year 600 Hijri came, there was a very pious person, we all hear his name. He was living in that region of India. And the Hindus tried every sort of jadoo and muti and massacre to harm this Waliullah. We all hear his name all the time. Khaja Mu'inuddin Chishti rahimahullah, who lived in that region, teaching people Allah's deen, inviting them to Allah. He taught them the dhikr of Allah. He made dawat, inviting them to deen, teaching them iman, teaching them who is Allah, teaching them the love of Allah. And the Hindus tried everything to get him out of that region. But no matter what they tried, they never succeeded. This was in the interim where there was no rule of Muslims in India, because Muslims were small pockets left, because Muslims were then, pushed away into Ghazna and other regions out of India. So small Muslim rulers, Muslim kings, but small pockets of Muslims, pious people were working in that region. Another very ajib thing happened also that was after the fall of Baghdad. But one ajib thing is, while Qutbuddin Ghori, Shihabuddin Ghori was coming into India to make jihad in Allah's path in the year 600 Hijri, this was approximately the same time Salahuddin Ayyubi. Now we all know Salahuddin Ayyubi. Salahuddin Ayyubi was striving in Allah's path against the Crusaders in the lands of Islam, in the east, in the lands of Sham, where Salahuddin was trying to get Palestine back. After Imaduddin Zingi and Nuruddin Zingi and Nuruddin Mahmud Zingi and Salahuddin Ayyubi. At the same time of Salahuddin rahimahullah, side by side, Allah's man was this side. And the ajib part was also, in the lands of Spain, there was another great waliullah, mujahid and a scholar who was serving in Allah's path, whose name was also Yusuf. Yusuf ibn Tashafin. We should remember these names of great people who protected Islam and preserved Islam. And then what happened was, this Raja of Prithvi oppressed Muslims who were living under Khaja Mu'inuddin Chishti Rahimahullah. Beat them up, tortured them, chased them, banished them, tried every tactic to get Muslims out of that region, wanted them out. To such an extent, on one occasion, their fingers were cut off. They brought their fingers to this waliullah. And he said, bury those fingers. But you see, with it, that same Raja who's doing this to you all, he will be buried. And Allah Ta'ala will bring his friends to help us. And just after that, Shihabuddin Rahimahullah Ghori came in. And Alhamdulillah, in spite of the 500,000 of Prithvi, Alhamdulillah, he conquered in that battle. His servants, this Qutbuddin Aibak, ruled after him. He ruled Delhi and he ruled many regions of India after Shihabuddin Ghori. And this Qutbuddin Aibak Rahimahullah loved the ulama so much. They loved ulama. They didn't make one move without asking the pious, without asking the awliya, without asking the ulama. Approximately at the same time, there was a great ruler, just to cut it a little short because then the names become too much, was a great ruler, Shamsuddin Al-Tamash. And all this was under the rule of Shihabuddin Ghori, who went back, but this was his efforts. Shihabuddin Ghori, we should remember his name and send so much of du'as for him and appreciate his efforts. Shamsuddin Al-Tamash was a ruler at the same time, 620, 630. He ruled Delhi and the surrounding areas of Delhi and those regions. And he loved the ulama. And he used to visit ulama. And he used to ask them for du'as. And he used to invite them to his regions. And he used to allow the ulama to work on the people. It was his time where Khaja Mu'inuddin Chishti Rahimahullah was making effort on the hearts of people. And he was making effort over the regions. And like that, the ulama and these great mujahideen worked together. And many, many people got hidayat through them. And the rulers were under the ulama. The rulers were under the ulama. To such an extent, at that time, there was a great scholar and waliullah by the name of Khaja Bakhtiyar Kaki Rahimahullah. When Sultan Shamsuddin Al-Tamash invited him from Multan, he came out of his city, Delhi, to welcome him. And when he welcomed him, he begged him, please, you stay in my palace. This waliullah refused. And he went to stay in his khanqah. So this ruler, Shamsuddin Al-Tamash, used to spend most of his time in the khanqah of Khaja Bakhtiyar Kaki Rahmatullah. To such an extent that when Khaja Mu'inuddin Chishti Rahimahullah came, and he told his student, Bakhtiyar Kaki Rahimahullah, come, we're going, I want to send you to another region. Because they used to send their students to different regions to strive in Allah Ta'ala's path. And this is something ajib. The ulama used to prepare their students and send them to different countries. And you will see this throughout. Like sometimes we hear Abdul Qadir Jilani Rahimahullah came to India and so forth. Actually, Abdul Qadir Jilani Rahimahullah lived in Baghdad. And there's so many beautiful incidents of how he worked on the people and how he became such a great scholar. He lived in the years 470 Hijri to 560 Hijri in Baghdad. But sometimes we hear he came to India and hundreds of thousands of people came to Islam. Probably that was his students, because studying his life, he sent his students to different regions. Indonesia, China, India. He sent his students into India. So sometimes probably we're hearing that he sent his students and we think it was him. But obviously he was a great waliullah. And in his one bayan, thousands of people and hundreds of thousands of Jews and Christians and Hindu and Majus, fire worshippers in Baghdad, used to embrace Islam. The masajid were too small for the bayans of Abdul Qadir Jilani Rahimahullah. His bayans used to be held in the open lands of the cities because there wasn't place. And he used to speak on the people that idol worship, worshipping makhluk is also idol worship. Kullu man i'tamatta alayhi fahuwa ilahuk. A famous statement, Rahimahullah. Anyone you place your faith in, that becomes your God. Your God in the time of need, in the time of difficulty, turn to Allah only. Idol worship is even worshipping Allah. That what can makhluk, in which way can makhluk benefit? How can makhluk help you and assist you? So these ulama used to prepare their students. Rahimahullah called his student, Khaja Bakhtiyar Kaki, that we go to another region. Sultan Shamsuddin Al-Tamash cried so much, and he walked out with his teacher out of Delhi. And when Khaja Mu'inuddin Chishti saw how this ruler, this king, loves this alim so much, he told his student, you go back and stay in Delhi. This man won't be able to bear it without you. How will this ruler manage without you? This is how it was. The ruler loved the ulama so much. This is how he reached so high. And what was the position of this ruler? When Khaja Bakhtiyar Kaki rahimahullah passed away in the year 633 Hijri. Now, you heard the incidents of the pious people. Khaja Bakhtiyar Kaki rahimahullah, when he was a little child, how he became a waliullah. He used to come home from learning, and his mother wouldn't just give him food. She would say, turn to Allah first, then I will give you. And I am not giving you, Allah will give you. So before the child would get food, he would turn to Allah, perform salah, ask of Allah, and then the for some errand, and she didn't realize time had elapsed, and she realized that time is gone now, and my child came home already, and there was no one to give him food. As she's going home, she's crying, oh Allah, for years I'm trying to make my child realize and see everything happening from you only, that I am just the means, and all the makhluk around us is just the means. Now, don't let it be that my efforts are dashed. She comes home, she sees her child playing happily. Oh my child, is everything okay? Did you eat? Yes ma, I ate. And what happened? I came home, I turned to Allah, and I found the food. Allah sent me the food. But ma, the taste today was something different. It was very, very special. It was a different taste. She fell in sajda, making shukr to Allah. That, oh Allah, you upheld this effort that I'm making on my child. This is how this awliya became such. It was the year 633 when he passed away. Hundreds of thousands of people gathered for his janazah. And as they gathered for his janazah, there was a wasiyah that he wrote, that person will perform my janazah who never perpetrates kabira gunah. Number one. Number two, never misses his salah with takbira ula. Never misses his salah with takbira ula. And number three, and never missed the 4 rakat sunnat before asr. That person will perform my janazah. Allahu Akbar. A long period passed, there was no one to come forth. No one to actually come and perform the salah. Until the ruler himself, Khaja Sultan Shamsuddin Altamash, comes forth and says that this was a secret between me and my Allah. But my Ustad's request is such that this has to be fulfilled. And he himself, the ruler of Delhi, himself performed janazah salah over his Ustad. This was the condition of these rulers. Just to jump a bit because my time has really elapsed, to get to much later until the greatest rulers of India came in. How did they come in? These rulers were Mamalik, the Mamluk dynasty of India, who I was telling you about, Altamash and so forth. Then came a great ruler, Babar, Muhammad Babar. Muhammad Babar came in and fought against the Lodi dynasty in Agra. And Ibrahim Lodi with his men came to fight Muhammad Babar. Numbering, the Lodi were the rulers of India at that time. The number of that army was 150,000. Muhammad Babar came in from Afghanistan and he numbered 12,000. And in the battle, he was about to die and he made niyat. Oh Allah, I make tawbah. Oh Allah, I'll never perpetrate guna. Every guna in my life I will leave. I will leave liquor. I will leave music. I'll leave everything wrong. Just with that intention he made, that his numbers of men being 12,000 overpowered the army of Lodi being 150,000. With that niyat he made. And that was a new dynasty in India called the Mughal dynasty. But interesting how they refer to themselves as the Mughal dynasty, because from his father's side he comes from the Taimur link dynasty. And Taimuriyun were the Turks. And Ajib, the Turks made so much of khidmat, spreading deen. Like a lot of these Shamsuddin Altamash, after Altamash was Balban. I had no time to actually share about Balban because my time has passed. Who were Turks. So the father of Babar comes from the Turk dynasty, Taimur. And his mother comes from the Mughal dynasty, Genghis Khan. But he preferred to affiliate to the Mughals because the Turks were actually originally slaves. After Turkestan fell and they were enslaved by the Mughals and so forth, so he felt there was more power in the Mughals. So that's how they're known as the Mughal dynasty. So Babar ruled, and he ruled for quite a few years. And after him, after Babar, his son Humayun ruled. Humayun also ruled for many, many years. But just to share some of their qualities, these were people who loved Allah, who loved the pious, they loved ulama, they loved dhikrullah. So much of adab they had for deen, that if he heard the adhan, he would just sit down out of respect. Whatever he would be doing, he would stop and sit down out of respect. They would never miss their salah, with jamaat. They were tahajjud guzar, to such an extent that Humayun was a man who was in wudu all the time. This king in India. Now, Ajib, these were rulers who ruled India for so many years. You know, sometimes we cry over Spain. Spain fell. Muslim Spain. Allahu Akbar. We cry over so many countries. But India also is such and worthy of tears being shed upon. That these were Muslim regions. Muslims ruled these regions. Humayun would never take Allah's name without wudu. His one governor's name was Abdul Hayy. And one day he never addressed him by his name, that as he would normally say, Ya Abdul Hayy. Normally he would address him like that. But he never did so on this occasion. And afterwards he explained to him that your name is attached to Allah's name, the servant of Al-Hayy, the ever-living. That's why I couldn't take your name, because I was not in the state of wudu. And then history records that there was another ruler, Sher Shah, who conquered Humayun. And then Humayun ran out of India and he took resort. And then he came back. And then, because of this interim of running and refuge, his son was completely jahil, Humayun's son. And his son was known as Jalaluddin Muhammad. Jalaluddin Muhammad. And he ruled India. It was approximately the years 970 Hijri. Now we are 1440 Hijri, 970 Hijri. And during his rule, he loved ulama also. There were bid'at that was in them also, like walking to the graves and so forth. But whatever the moves they made, they always asked from ulama. And they were ulama of haqq, many, many ulama of haqq. There was great muftis, there were great qadis. He would ask them. But what then happened was Jalaluddin was completely ignorant. So he started calling everyone to join his company. And then there were certain scholars who just learnt and had knowledge, but they had no taqwa. And they wanted to manipulate the ruler to win the ruler towards their side so that they can get positions. So whenever the ruler would ask the muftis for fatwa, these scholars, namely Abul Fadl and Faydi, the two sons of Mullah Mubarak, see, Jalaluddin later and give durus. And then any move he used to make, he used to ask from the ulama. There was a great scholar by the name of Sheikh Abdul Nabi. And he was the great mufti of on this earth. You don't need to ask from the ulama. You are the ruler, and the ruler is bigger than the ulama. Instead of teaching him that you have to ask the ulama before you, because your field is different, and the ulama will guide you. And then he started thinking that he's too great. And then towards the end of the millennium, actually in the year 987, one strange incident happened, and then this Akbar started marrying Hindu women. He married one woman in India who actually was the daughter of one Hindu king. And because he married her, he wanted the ulama to legalize it. And ulama of falsehood used to actually say it's fine. Actually they weren't true ulama. And the ulama of haqq would actually prohibit it and stop this. But Humayun, but Akbar didn't listen. Because he was influenced by these women. To such an extent that one of the teachers of this wife of his, Juda Bai, this teacher, who was a pandit of one of the temples, demolished one masjid. And this was taken to the qadi of that region, whose name was Maulana Abdul Halim. And he actually looked into the whole situation, and he found that this pandit actually demolished the masjid, and he passed the decision that this Hindu has to be killed, because this is what he did to the masjid. And when this happened, the wife of Akbar got very upset. And other Hindus came into the whole situation, and they influenced Akbar. And then sadly, this Abul Fadl. Now Abul Fadl was such a person. He even wrote tafsir without using the huruf of the Arabic language that have dots. Hazrat Maulana Ahmad Sarhandi rahimahullah says that he even came to ask me for help, and I helped him with certain ayat. Hazrat Maulana Ahmad Sarhandi, who was a great scholar at that time, who comes from the offspring of Umar radiallahu anhu. Allah has His people in each time to save the people of Iman, to save the Ummah and preserve and protect the deen. What then happened was, when this happened, this Abul Fadl convinced Akbar that you are greater than these ulama. These ulama are actually saying the wrong thing. And then he banished these ulama and said to them, you'll go to Hijaz. And then he had people to follow them and watch them. Were they to come back from Hijaz, they were to be killed. And actually, Maulana Abdul Nabi was then killed after that. So sadly, this is when Akbar started thinking he is greater and nobody can tell him anything. And then towards the end of the millennium, these stooges around him told him that actually the millennium is ending now, and Muhammad ﷺ, started Islam. You have to start a new faith. And Akbar then took a completely opposite turn, where he started showing respect to the sun, and he started, prohibiting the slaughter of cows, and he started showing respect to certain days and practices of the Hindus, and started encouraging or allowing these dots on the forehead and different things. And this was very, very sad. To such an extent, Abul Fadl, who wrote this tafsir, see with what evil intentions, he actually then convinced Akbar that Quran is not Allah's kalam. It's Muhammad ﷺ's compilation. That's why the son of Akbar, Jahangir, now a great alim at that time made effort, Hazrat Maulana Ahmad Sarhindi rahimahullah. And he started with sending letters and started meeting the people around Akbar to get them to have the correct mizaj and temperament to influence Akbar correctly. Then he started working on the children of Akbar. To such an extent, his grandson, Saifuddin bin Muhammad bin Ahmad Sarhindi, was the teacher of Jahangir. Was the teacher of Aurangzeb, who was the son of Jahangir. Now, Jahangir got so upset that Abul Fadl convinced his father that Quran is not Kalamullah. He had sent one of his men to kill Abul Fadl. Jahangir did so. Anyway, Akbar was very, very upset, but not long after that Akbar died. Allah knows whether he made tawbah after that. But when Jahangir took over, it was a time when Maulana Ahmad Sarhindi rahimahullah was making great efforts. You can read the works, the letters of Hazrat Maulana Ahmad Sarhindi rahimahullah. And he was actually imprisoned for his efforts. But he didn't give up. To such an extent, on one occasion when he was called to the court of Jahangir. Now because Akbar had a system that you had to bow down before him, Jahangir followed the same system. But Akbar wanted it through worship, because he felt he is also Akbar, na'udhu billah. But Jahangir did it because it was a practice out of respect, and it was common. When Maulana Ahmad Sarhindi rahimahullah came before him, he even refused to bow down, or bend down, or prostrate. And the people around Jahangir actually then refuted to this. And that's how when Maulana Ahmad Sarhindi was put into prison in this one region, Korelia of India. And when he was in imprisonment, he kept on making the dhikr of Allah and sending letters to his students, preparing them, encouraging them how to work. And then when he came out of prison, he gathered his students. And Ajib, he actually sent his students to countries of the world. Hazrat Maulana Ahmad Sarhindi, what he did, he sent his students, it was in the year 1026, where he prepared hundreds of his students. And he sent 70 of his students who were ulama, and he sent them to Turkestan to teach deen in that region. He sent 40 of his students to Hijaz-e-Muqaddas, to Yemen, to Rome, to Sham. He sent 10 of his great students to Kashgar. He sent 30 of his students under Sheikh Ahmad Burki to Turan and Badakhshan and Khurasan. And he sent his students to different regions to teach deen, to bring alive deen and to give dawah to Allah Ta'ala. And in every region his students went, people learned the correct mizaj of deen. People learned the correct understanding of deen. This was how our ulama made great efforts. This was under Jahangir. And after Jahangir's other title was Shah Jahan. Now Shah Jahan was a great king, but he also had certain misunderstandings, and Allama Ahmad Sarhindi worked on him until he came onto the correct path. To such an extent that his son, who was a famous scholar and a famous king, Aurangzeb rahimahullah, he was not to be the next king. He was one of the young sons of Shah Jahan. And his teacher was Hazrat Maulana Ahmad Sarhindi rahimahullah's grandson, Saifuddin rahimahullah. One of the teachers of Aurangzeb rahimahullah was a scholar by the name of Mullah Jiwan rahimahullah, an author of famous kitabs that we learn in our Darul Ulooms. Now this is years not long ago. What happened? See, this is in the years 1030, 1040 Hijri. Add 600 years, that's approximately almost 1700, almost 350 years ago. Shah Jahan one day he actually got some fatwa from where he wanted to, that it's permissible for him, being a king, to wear a silken kurta, full silk. So he made this beautiful kurta in silk, and he's marching to the masjid on the day of Jumu'ah in his pomp and glory. What then happened is, as he's marching to the masjid on the day of Jumu'ah, he met the khatib and the alim of that time, and his son's ustad, Mullah Jiwan rahimahullah. And he asked him, is this permissible? Is it jais for me to wear the silk? He says, silk. He says, I don't want you to answer now. I want you to answer in front of everyone. Because the king was worried. People mustn't also make ishkal against him. So Mullah Jiwan rahimahullah, he is going to speak haqq. He goes home. Because he was on his way to the masjid also. He goes home. He greets his wife and his children, and he bids them farewell. That I am going to give the khutbah and I am going to explain haqq. I'm not going to come out of the masjid because I'm going to be killed. I'm not expecting to come home. He bidded them farewell. Everyone was emotional. He goes to the masjid. And he gives his khutbah and he explains the prohibition of silk on the lips of Rasulullah. And he explained that even if you wear it, it's haram. And if you consider it as halal, it is irtidad. It is apostasy. And his whole bayan was on this. These were scholars who feared nothing. They feared no one. They feared Allah alone. And when he completed his khutbah, completed his bayan, as he made salam, the king himself got so scared because people loved the ulama and respected the ulama so much. The king thought he will be attacked. He ran to his shoes and ran back to his palace. When he gets to his palace, he sends out a warrant of arrest for Mullah Jiwan rahimahullah. Now Shah Jahan's son was Aurangzeb rahimahullah, who's the student of Mullah Jiwan. He rushes to his ustad. Please ustadji, ask my father for maaf. I don't want you to be harmed. I don't want you to be hurt. He says, your father is sending the warrant of arrest for me. So he says to the students, bring my weapons. What is his weapons? Bring my musalla, bring my miswak, bring my lota. I'm also taking arms. Aurangzeb rahimahullah gets so scared now, he runs to his father. He begs his father, my ustad is taking arms. He got Allah on his side, you will be in trouble. Go to him and ask him for maaf. Shah Jahan humbled himself and he rushed to Mullah Jiwan rahimahullah and begged him for maafi. So this was a time when the rulers submitted to the teachings of the ulama. Shah Jahan had quite a few sons. Dara Shikwa was his eldest son. He had other sons, Shuja'. One of his young sons was Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb was very, very brave. It's reported in the documents of history that on one occasion they were viewing this like a concert, so to say, like an elephant fight. And the elephant, got loose and it darted toward the direction in which was Aurangzeb, this young prince. Aurangzeb was 14 at that time. And he goes for the elephant. The elephant throws him with his horse onto the ground. And the elephant is very dangerous because one stamp of the elephant, a person is smashed, flattened. But Aurangzeb gets up and, swishes his sword towards the elephant until the soldiers come in and, push off the elephant. But his father noticed how brave is this youngster. And he made him a governor of one region, Deccan in India. But then quite a few times Aurangzeb wanted to go for Hajj, but his father refused. But then Aurangzeb, under the guidance of the ulama, because a time came where Shah Jahan took his mind completely off the kingdom, India. Because this was a big kingdom covering India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, all this was one. Then Sri Lanka, then Afghanistan, that whole region, all these regions were under these Muslim rulers, the Mughal rulers of India, Shah Jahan. But Shah Jahan now was utilizing the funds and building Taj Mahal. And then his mind was only in this, that his wife passed away, and he was emotional and he was sad. And the next ruler after Shah Jahan was Dara Shikwa. And Dara Shikwa had a motive and had a plan. His plan was to bring alive the deen of Akbar, the great-grandfather. And Aurangzeb was worried. And then he took fatwa from ulama that it is now permissible for you to kill Dara Shikwa. He left his region as a governorship and he came to Delhi and he went behind his brother and he got his brother exterminated. And then he became the king of India. What he did to his father, he gave him full ikram, but he kept him under house arrest. He put for him one region where he went to view Taj Mahal, he built for him that other whole, and he left him with full respect. But he then ruled India, the length and the breadth of India, right till the borders of Iran, right till hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Aurangzeb rahimahullah ruled. And how he ruled? Allahu Akbar. He ruled from the year 1068 till 1118. 50 years of rule. The longest standing Muslim ruler in the entire dunya, in history, was Aurangzeb rahimahullah. But what was his rule? It wasn't that he was a scholar, so now when he ruled, he forgot about rulership, or he was a Allah wala, because he was a Allah wala. He was a man of dhikr, he was a man of love of ulama. But he ruled with justice, he ruled with integrity, he ruled with importance and fervor, and he strove in Allah Ta'ala's path. Islam spread wide, vast in India under the rule of Aurangzeb. And what was his taqwa? He never ever ate from the public funds. In his first 20 years, he worked on uniting the entire India. Then after that, 27 years, striving in Allah Ta'ala's path, bringing people into Allah Ta'ala's deen. He was 90 when he passed away. He never ever eat anything from the public funds. What he used to eat? He used to write. He was a scribe. He was a professional in calligraphy. He used to write down copies of the Quran Kareem and sell that. And from there he used to eat, put into his mouth. Even though India was so rich at that time, but he never ever took anything from the public funds. To such an extent, he was a tahajjud guzar. He fasted not only in Ramadan, he fasted thrice a week. Monday, Thursday and Friday was his fast. He used to make tarawih. He used to make i'tikaf. He used to write kitabs. There's books of his on ash'ar, on poetry on the love of Allah in the Persian language. It was the language of India at that time. He wrote a book on 40 ahadith, the 40 ahadith of Rasulullahﷺ. That was one he wrote before his sultanah, before his rulership. And he wrote another kitab on 40 other ahadith of Rasulullahﷺ with commentary during his rule and during his reign, with his jihad, striving in the path of Allah Ta'ala. He strove in Allah Ta'ala's path over 50 times. And when he passed away also, he was actually 1,500 kilometers away from home. He passed away in the path of Allah Ta'ala. And as he's passing away at the age of 90, he gave wasiyah that my kafan must be bought with this money. And where did he get that money from? He made topis, qalansua, and he sold that somehow. He sold that. And from there, his kafan was bought. And that's how this great ruler of the Muslim lands, he passed away. That was Aurangzeb, rahmatullah alayh. Justice, integrity, kindness, mercy, compassion. And when was this? This is a couple of 100 years ago. After him, just to crux the whole thing, because now time has also elapsed. There's no time to actually discuss this whole region now. But after him, when his sons didn't have the level of deen that he had, and when deen comes out of the life, automatically we lose the help of Allah Ta'ala. That was now 1702. And Ajib, when his sons neglected deen, and after that deen was neglected further, like in the time of Akbar, Allah brought about Hazrat Maulana Ahmad Sarhindi rahimahullah. During the time and the reign of the sons of Aurangzeb rahimahullah, Allah brought about a great scholar, Hazrat Maulana Shah Waliullah Dehlavi rahmatullah, who was born in the year 1702, Gregorian calendar. And he lived right till 1763. Him and his children then protected the deen of the ummah at that time. How Allah Ta'ala brought the ulama and brought the people at the right time to protect the deen when rulers went astray. And like this, Islam reached us. My beloved brothers, my respected elders, great sacrifices were made. Great sacrifices were made. Then sadly after that, how the English came in and how they usurped the rights of people. And this you read about all the time. You can tell me about this much more. How they came in and they deceived people, showing the Indians that, what we have is much greater, and how they took over Muslim lands using tactics of, purchasing property and having their company, East Indian Company, and every harvest of India was then sent to Europe, and then it had to be purchased and brought back into India. But it's actually coming from India. And they tricked the people, showing them that everything from Europe is great and big and powerful, and everything that India has is completely backward. And what they started doing is causing disunity among the Muslims. Any misunderstanding of Islam, they would actually fund that. Like whatever misunderstandings, they would fund that and support that, like Qadianism and such things like Shiism and so forth. England would actually support that and fund that. And they continue funding it and supporting it. To such an extent that how when Deen became very weak at that time also. Then in the year 1857, that Sultanate of India, completely, Bahadur Shah, it was completely finished, where he was banished and his kingdom was taken away, his palace in Delhi, and then his children were actually cooked and fed in front of him. It was quite ajib, it was very, very sad how the English and the Hindus supporting them treated the Muslims, and how then they actually treated Muslims very, very badly. But at that time again also, Allah Ta'ala brought about the ulama. It was at that time when Darul Ulum Deoband was established. At that time, 1857, is it? 1857 at that time. And the purpose was to bring alive Deen. To bring alive Deen. And just to complete, my respected elders, Deen has reached us with sacrifice. The Ottoman Khilafah, the Khilafah Uthmaniyah, the Muslims of India were very, very close to the Ottoman Khilafah. Many times Sulaiman Qanuni used to send help and send ships to help the Muslims of India under the rules of Aurangzeb and so forth. He used to send his ships to help the Muslims when the Portuguese tried to come in and conquer India and so forth. But ajib, when the Ottoman Khilafah fell, Deen was dying in so many countries of the world. It was Allah's mercy that these ulama stood up in India. That's how India didn't become like Spain in the 9th century. What happened to Spain in the 10th century? When Muslims, were destroyed in Spain, Islam was destroyed. What happened to Russia in the 14th century? Allah's fazl, the same thing didn't happen in India. This was the efforts of the ulama. And what about throughout the world? When the Khilafah fell in 1924, the Khilafah Uthmaniyah fell completely in 1924, one great Ottoman ruler, Abdul Hamid II, he ruled from 1886 to 1909. What a ruler he was, Ya Allah, what a ruler he was. He built that Hijaz railway from Istanbul right to, inshallah, Allah give us tawfiq, we'd love to come and share with you the history of the Ottoman Empire. Allah give us tawfiq. From Istanbul right till Medina Munawwara. And Muslims from all around the world funded this railway. And the Muslims of India gave the greatest amount of contribution. And the names of that list of Muslims was actually preserved by Abdul Hamid. Then Europe came in and fought against Abdul Hamid because they wanted that list. Who are these Muslims of India supporting the Khilafah and building this railway? Because that railway was to unite the Muslim world. And Abdul Hamid, with his life, he preserved that list. Because the English who were ruling India at that time, the British, they wanted to punish those Muslims who actually funded this. And Abdul Hamid did his best, and he preserved and protected that list with his life. So Abdul Hamid made great sacrifice until the time when he was forced to step down by those same Jews who he welcomed and gave them a place to stay when Spain fell. And they were also banished from Spain. But then ajib, just to finish off, in 1924 when the Khilafah fell, it was the same time also, same year, Allah inspired, because when the Khilafah fell, Deen came out of the lives of people in countries of the world. Study the history of Albania and countries of these European countries, the Balkans and Rhodes and all these countries that were strong under the Ottoman rule. But when the Khilafah fell, masjids were locked. Deen completely came out of the lives. Islam was banned in those regions. That was the same time when Khilafah fell. Allah inspired Hazrat Maulana Muhammad Ilyas Rahmatullah alayh. We always hear his name. Hazrat Maulana Muhammad Ilyas Rahmatullah alayh. Allah inspired him to bring alive this work of Sahaba radiyallahu anhu. What work? To go to people and talk about Allah's deen. To go to people, invite them to masjid. Teach the ummah. Solution is masjid. Teach the ummah. Allah's help is in connecting to masjid. Allah's help is with a'mal. This is what this work is about. To work on our iman, to build our iman, and to bring the ummah onto iman. This is what this work is about. We heard about Humayun, that great king Humayun. Maulana Ilyas Rahmatullah Ali used to go to that masjid and make dhikrullah. Thousands and thousands of dhikr he used to make in that masjid of Humayun, that king Humayun that we heard about. So beloved brothers, we have to play our part for deen to reach the coming progenies, for deen to remain preserved. We have to work on our iman, and we have to work on the iman of the ummah. There's no such thing. I am coming to the masjid, I am making my ibadat, I am following the sunnah, and that's all. That's all I have to do with deen. There's no such thing. Muhammad ﷺ is the last Nabi. Sacrifices were made. Effort was made for deen to reach us. Khaja Mu'inuddin Chishti Rahmatullahi used to work on the people and connect them to deen. Every one of us have to connect ourselves, connect our families, and we have to connect humanity to deen. We have to serve deen. Support the masajid, support the madaris, and strive in the path of Allah Ta'ala, and join in the dhikr of Allah Ta'ala. We have to do all the works of deen. And also, we have to bring the non-Muslims to Islam. Today, none of us are bringing the non-Muslims to Islam. Whose duty is it? When these rulers came into India, they worked on the non-Muslims. They brought them to Islam. Our forefathers were non-Muslims, were Hindus. What Hindus do? Imagine that. That's what our forefathers were doing. These Sahabaar radiallahu anhum, from the time of Tabi'een, they came there and took pity and showed our forefathers that this is not the way. Idols can't help you. Allah is going to help you. The cow can't help you. Allah is going to help you. That Hindu, that Christian, that Jew, that African Zulu brother, whoever he may be, working for you, working for me, who is going to tell him? Who is going to introduce Allah to him? Who is going to introduce Islam to him? Whose duty is it? If there was another Nabi to come, then we could say, you know what, that's not our duty. Beloved brothers, this is our responsibility. Let's take part in that also. Bring new people to the masjid. Will we do this inshallah? Allah give us tawfiq. And also send our youth, come out in the path of Allah Ta'ala. Holidays are coming. Allah Ta'ala accept us for His deen inshallah. Hazrat Muhammad Akoo sahab, aap dua kijiye please.